This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick DeRay, Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I want to welcome everyone to the fourth of our four planned bar advisory group meetings for calendar year 2021. And glad all of you could be joining us. It is officially fall, and I know that because not just because the calendar saying so, but it is now raining for the first time in a while. So happy to see a change of weather. We need this rain up here in Northern California. Actually, the entire state needs it. So happy to see that we're going to get some much needed rain here today and over the course of the next week or so. So want to welcome all of you. We've got good representation of the Bar Advisory Group members today. I'm going to call out those who have joined us. I think we have all but one who are at the meeting today. Lou Anapolsky with Knox Lemon Anapolsky and Shrimp LLP. And Lou, good to see you here. I see you have an organization that I don't recognize, CMDA, on your as your call letters after your name. I'm not sure what that is. I was looking it up right before the meeting here, and it was either Christian Medical and Dental Associations or California Motorcycle Association or California Motorcycle Dealers Association. So is it one of those two, or is another CMDA out there?
California Midas Dealers Association.
Ah, there you go. I should have known. I knew that one. I'm embarrassed.
It's an age thing.
It is with me, yes. I didn't realize they had their own acronym, but that makes sense. Thank you very much. Next, Nikki Ayers with the Independent Automotive Professionals Association, also IAPA. Gary Conover with the California Automotive Wholesalers Association, or CAWA, C-A-W-A. Jeff Cox with the Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association / Motorist Assurance Program, also known as AMRA-MAP. Johan Gallo with the California Automotive Business Coalition, also known as CalABC. Vince Gregory, AAA Northern California. George Ritz, California Automotive Teachers. David Kusa with the Automotive Service Councils of California, also known as ASC-CA. Standing in as an alternate for Brian Moss is Anthony Bento with the California New Car Dealers Association, CNCDA. Megan McKernan is also joining us today with the Automobile Club of Southern California. So got AAA North and AAA South. Jack Maladonoff with the California Auto Body Association, or CAA. Ruben Parra, also with the California Automotive Teachers. And David Robinette with the Inter-Industry Conference on Auto Collision Repair, also known as ICAR. Thank you all for being here. We have, I think, it looks to be like a light agenda today, but I would venture to guess that we'll get a lot of questions along the way, which is the reason we kept it light. Questions in the answer period after each presentation tend to take up some time, so we didn't want to put too much on the agenda that prevented us from getting to all the questions. I know there's going to be a lot of interest in couple of these presentations, so I want to leave time for the substantial Q&A that is likely to follow. I wanted to also spend, I'm jumping around a little bit, mention that we have a couple of announcements for our executive office. One is that Linda Jansen is a new deputy chief for our administration division. That's all things admin here at BAR, which includes our personnel office, contracts, business services, like facilities management. Our licensing program is also under that deputy's responsibilities, as well as oversight of the consumer assistance program, the repair assistance and vehicle retirement programs. Linda was a a manager in the admin division at a level below, overseeing personnel and business services and contracts matters. So happy to have her promote to the front office with the retirement of her predecessor, Shelley Whitaker, a couple of months ago, earlier this summer. So welcome, Linda, to your new role and position and title here at the Bureau.
Thank you, Pat. I'm happy to be attending my very first VAG meeting as the Deputy Chief.
And coming live to you from her new home in, I don't know, Roseville, I think.
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, but it's like a beautiful living room or family room that you're coming to us from. Clay Leak is also here. He's also a member of our executive team. Clay, you there?
Good morning. Yep.
You all know Clay. He's responsible for our engineering, overseeing the engineering and research branch, as well as our technology services branch, and has been a big focus on the enforcement and licensing modernization effort that's going on or about to be going on shortly. We've got a very important presentation on that effort. Achieved a very important milestone that allow us to procure for the services needed to update our existing licensing, and then secondly, our enforcement programs that are reliant on legacy systems here that have been around for 30, 40 years or more, as far as the digital and electronic requirements that are necessary to support those programs. So happy Clay is here. I had a couple of things I also wanted to mention. This year saw the signing of an important bill, AB 471. We're going to get an update from Holly O'Connor shortly about that bill, as well as the status of a number of regulations that we've been working on. But I know for a number of you, the AB 471, as it was for the Bureau, or is for the Bureau, a very important piece of legislation. There's a lot of things that we have expected of us to put into motion or implement with specific deadlines. And I'm very excited that we were able to see the governor sign that bill into law back in late September. Excuse me. And we'll be working to start on regulations very shortly. In fact, we have two workshops today, one of which is dedicated to one of the provisions in AB 471. The first workshop will be, what time is the workshop? The first one is at 2 o'clock, and it is on storage fees. One of the items that was provided some specific statutory authority in AB 471, and the regulations are going to put a little more definition to that oversight or authority in terms of the Bureau's role in this effort. At least that's what it aims to do. So there'll be a workshop at 2 o'clock on that item, and then a second workshop unrelated to AB 471, but which we've been working on for the better part of a year, as some changes to our auto body and windshield installation and repair regulations. And there's a proposal that we want to share with the advisory group and the public at a workshop that will follow that first workshop on the storage fees. So two workshops scheduled later today at 2 and 3:15. AB 471 is so critical with so many timelines that we want to make sure that we get it implemented appropriately and with involvement and participation of all of our stakeholders, that I have worked to get a position specifically dedicated towards the coordination of that entire effort. It's just too much for one person in this executive office currently to take on. You know, Clay is extremely busy with the ELM effort, amongst other things. My time would not be able to squeeze this in, and it just felt to me necessary to get this done appropriately and with all of the work that needs to be done, that it could only be handled by a new position that we create for a limited term. It's going to be a 2-year assignment until such time as we get the regulations and everything adopted. And there are actually some of the regulations are even go beyond that 2-year time frame, so we might even have to extend it beyond there if possible. But I've announced a position. It's been posted. I believe individuals are applying for it as we speak, and we'll hope to hold interviews and fill that position very shortly, hopefully by the end of the month. I also want to mention that we are, while we're still dealing with the pandemic and on the verge of conducting weekly testing here at Bureau headquarters for all of our employees who have not shown proof of vaccination, kind of falling in the path of the Department of Consumer Affairs, which has already taken this major effort as kind of a pilot on behalf of the administration. The Department of Consumer Affairs has been doing the weekly testing for 2 or 3 weeks at their headquarters, and BAR is going to be jumping into that around the first week of November. But along with that, I think we're expecting some other changes at some point, going back to live meetings for this BAR advisory group and all of our other public meetings, such as our workshops. But for now, today is strictly a virtual meeting, as it has been for the better part of a year or more. And I expect that January's meeting, January 2022's meeting, will also be virtual, but I'm very hopeful that we'll be moving back to live meetings beginning next year, hopefully as early as April 2022. And there is even the chance we have served as a guinea pig, so to speak, to do a hybrid approach where you do a live virtual meeting as well as a live in-person meeting. And we did that for an all-staff meeting a few months ago on behalf of the department to test that out. It was a little clumsy. There were little bugs a few debugs that need to be worked out, and we're hoping that we can get there so that we could give either option to our BAR advisory group members. I know that in-person meetings were a challenge for some who travel from many miles to get here and spend the money to get here. I know that's can be a cost savings and has been a cost savings with these virtual meetings that are helpful to those who are coming in from out of town. So stay tuned for more developments on that. I think, as I previously stated, that the January meeting will probably be a straight virtual meeting, virtual only. And then in April, we'll look to go back to in-person meetings and maybe even have a combination hybrid approach where we do both at the same time. That's going to be it for my introductions. Were there any questions before I continue with the agenda? Okay, let's see any hands raised. I would, as a matter of order, when anyone does make a presentation or has a question or answering to a question, please turn on your video if you could. I like a personal approach to these meetings. It They are open to the public. So we want to make sure that we are as transparent as possible in conducting these. Someone asked a question about the what is it called? The Great American Shakeout for the earthquake drill that's scheduled for 10/21. We are encouraged to observe it, so I'll do my best to pay attention to the clock on my computer here, and I'll pause whoever's presenting at the time, and we'll give a 30 to 60 second pause for people to take cover under their desks as it's encouraged, or do whatever you might otherwise do during an earthquake, stand under the door jamb or what have you. So we'll do our best to observe that. If our moderator, Sarah Ronnie, wants to call my attention to it because I've somehow neglected looking at the clock here on the computer at the appropriate time, please call my attention to it. Sarah, I should have mentioned you are our moderator. I'll refer to you as Sarah or moderator. We also have a co-moderator, Ann Fisher is joining us, and the meeting is being webcast by Mike Sanchez from the department's Public Affairs Office. So welcome and thank you to each of you. All right, we're going to continue with the agenda. Here to give us an update on all things relating to the Department of Consumer Affairs, news and updates is Brianna Miller. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for having me. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. I've been told when I'm wearing this pilot-like earphones that I have on right now, headset that I have on, sometimes I can be difficult to hear. So please advise if that's the case. Seeing that it might not be the case, I'll get started. So good morning. I'm Brianna Miller with the Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide a department update to your group today. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about COVID-19 safety measures and telework. DCA appreciates all board and committee members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected all of us in so many ways. We are working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while keeping safe and healthy. DCA and all of its board and bureaus continue to look to the future and use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective consumer protection and public service while also utilizing telework where appropriate. DCA is assembling a task force to help the department create a telework policy that will provide further clarity and structures for managers and staff, and that's expected to be finalized next fall. Next, I'll discuss testing and vaccination verification, which Chief DeRay mentioned a few minutes ago. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California is implementing enhanced safety measures for state employees and workers in healthcare settings. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October with the launch of the DCA Headquarters 1 locations pilot site. Select programs have been designated to test at Headquarters 1, and that list of programs recently expanded due to the capabilities of the site. Other sites will begin testing at a later date. Board and committee members must follow health and safety protocols if they plan to visit a DCA location or attend an in-person meeting. So members like yourself must verify vaccination or follow testing protocols in accordance with that location's requirements. Please communicate any plans for in-person meetings as soon as possible so DCA can assist with coordination of teleconference options for the public, vaccination verification, and COVID-19 testing. And next, I'll discuss remote meetings. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. As the law stands today, remote meetings are allowed until January 30th, 2022, after which time meetings will need to be in person in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meetings Act. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but I think we all recognize there are benefits to remote meeting options, such as increased public participation, cost savings, and a lower carbon footprint due to reduced travel. DCA encourages boards and bureaus to continue utilizing remote meetings this year to protect the health of staff, board and committee members, and the public. And we will keep you updated on any additional changes to meeting requirements as they occur. And next up, I'd like to touch on scam alerts. DCA has been made aware of various scams affecting boards and bureaus. We have shared information about these scams on the DCA website and social media. So please take a moment to visit the DCA Fraud Alert website, which you can find by going to DCA's website at dca.ca.gov to learn about these scams and how to protect yourself from malicious individuals. And finally, I'd like to provide your group with a reminder about the sexual harassment prevention training and the learning management system. As a reminder, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. This means that all employees and board members are required to complete the training during this year, which is rapidly approaching its end. Board and committee members, including yourselves, will access this training through the Learning Management System, or LMS for short, which is DCA's training portal. We have created profiles for each of you in the LMS and informed your bureau chief of the steps you will need to take to log in and access the training. Board and Bureau Relations is also happy to assist you with any questions or concerns you may have about using LMS. And as always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help you and your bureau, and if there's anything we can do to assist you, please don't hesitate to reach out. So that concludes my presentation, and I will hand it back over to Bureau Chief DeRay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Brianna, for the information and update from the department's executive office. Any questions or comments from advisory group members? I don't see any hands raised. Moderator, you may open it up for any public questions or comments. I see we have about 47 attendees, some of whom are bar employees and other members of the public as well.
This is the moderator, and I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. If any members of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or you can click the raise hand icon next to your name. If you are an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. At this point, I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing no raised hands or requests in the Q&A, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, you may. All right. Just double checking to make sure that we have no other comments from the bar advisory group. It does not appear as though we have anything. Brianna, you got off easy today.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, that is, not for letting me off easy. All right, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Good job. All right, let's move to the next item on our agenda, an update on legislation and regulations. Holly O'Connor with BAR's Executive Office. Holly, good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning.
I know the question on everyone's mind is going to be AB 471. I know you have just one slide or maybe two dedicated to it, but there might be some questions as it relates to that, and I'll try to help you if there are. But let's get started with you right now.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Holly O'Connor, the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist here at BAR. And as Chief DeRay said, I'll be providing a legislation update as well as an update on our pending regulatory packages. These are some notable dates. The last day for the governor to sign or veto bills was October 10th. Chaptered bills take effect on January 1st, and legislature reconvenes January 3rd. Bills introduced in 2021 must pass out of the first house by January 21st in order to continue forward, or they will die. These are the 2021 chaptered bills that we've been following. AB 471, which I'll discuss in just a minute, and SB 586. We were tracking this bill, and it dealt with regulation for IID installation services by ARDs, but all the provisions that pertain to us were removed. And SB 607, that extends our sunset review period by 1 year.
And just if I can jump in here real quickly, IID stands for Ignition Interlock Devices.
Thank you.
That was the SB 586 bill that was gut and amended to take that out of the bill and make it whatever became a health bill.
So AB 471 was chaptered September 28th, and a quick summary, it provides lien authority for storage fees, new requirements for recognizing educational certifications on the automotive repair dealer registration application. It provides authority to provide an informal review process for bar-issued citations. That's with a 3-member panel. Until July 1st, 2026, it allows for remedial training to expunge certain citations from an automotive repair dealer's record if no training was taken or if the citation became effective within the previous 18 months. And it provides regulatory authority to develop a new vehicle safety systems inspection and certification program by 2024. Pat, do you want me to ask questions about this bill now or wait until at the end? You're on mute, I think. Pat, you're on mute, Pat.
I knew I'd do that at least once this meeting. Let's continue
Okay,
with your
thank you.
presentation. There's only one item on the legislative front that we're giving an update on. Well, you're going to show this one slide about the 2-year bills, but continue with the presentation and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The bills listed here are the ones that we have been tracking that have not yet moved out of the first house. So we will continue to track these bills and update you further at the next meeting. Okay, actually, yes. So that's it for legislation. I will go back to this slide and want to ask if anyone has questions regarding this bill.
This is the moderator. I see raised hands from Nikki and Johan.
All right, let's go. Nikki Ayers, question or comment?
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I'm sorry.
I don't see any hands raised either.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
WebEx has been pretty testy with the raised hands, so it could be that it's showing up on my end for some reason.
I don't see anything on my end. Does anyone have a hand raised?
Yeah, I have my hand up.
Oh, okay. It's not showing up on mine, my screen here. Okay, Johan Gallo with the California Automotive Business Coalition.
Good morning, Holly. I just wanted to thank the BAR staff, all the associations, and everybody's collective work on this bill. I know that we spent a lot of time with Danielle Sires and Lowe's staff working through all the details on this bill to get it to move forward. And we appreciate everybody's support in order to move this thing forward and to see the governor sign it. Now the real work begins. So as Pat mentioned, I appreciate also that BAR is going to assign someone to head this up and create a position to do that, because this is probably the most critical piece of legislation we've had pass with reference to the BAR and the things that we do and how we operate in many years. So just wanted to shout out and say thank you to everybody that worked on it.
Thank you, Johan. It's nice remarks about all of the industry efforts to coordinate the support for the bill. It certainly was instrumental, I'm sure, in the governor's decision to sign the bill. So, yeah, I guess congratulations to the industry for banding together to move this entire package forward with many items. There is quite a lot of work to do, as you pointed out, and there's just too much for one person currently here in our front office or anyone currently in the bureau to take this on with their existing responsibilities. So I had to create a position solely dedicated to tracking this and working with all of our stakeholders, internal and external, to get the work done that needs to be done. Other questions, comments relating to the legislative portion of Holly's update? I'm not seeing hands raised, so if anyone else is out there and I'm passing you over, speak up. Okay. Holly, I think you can continue.
Okay.
We'll open it up for public comment at the very end.
Okay, thank you. I don't have control to move my slides. May I please get control back?
This is the moderator. I have you as the presenter, but let me take it back and reassign it, see if that fixes it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, try again now.
Yep, there we go.
Yay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll be discussing our regulation proposals. Here's our list that I will be going over, beginning with our smog check equipment security and fraud prevention package, also known as our biometrics package. The purpose of this package is to require the use of biometric and web camera devices when performing a smog check. It requires that smog check stations allow the Bureau access whenever inspections are being performed, even if they're being performed outside of normal business hours. It requires that smog check inspectors allow bar staff remote access to the inspection process when prompted by the bar OIS software. And this package is currently undergoing the 45-day comment period, which ends on November 8th. We will be holding a hearing for this package. We're still working on the date, but all interested parties will be notified in advance. And after the hearing and comment period ends, we will finalize the package with the final statement of reasons for final review, and then goes to OAL for further review and adoption.
Holly?
Yes.
Can you interrupt just a second? I don't know if you can go back to that. Did you mention that there's a hearing being planned and should be noticed?
I did.
Okay, I missed that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I let everyone know that all interested parties will be notified in advance of the
Right.
hearing and will be able to.
It should go out tomorrow, the notice.
The next one is our STAR program update. And this amends, well, first of all, it deletes outdated Gold Shield program provisions. It amends STAR eligibility criteria, and it revises the STAR suspension process so that's consistent with statute. The public comment period for this package ended on August 10th, and this is currently undergoing final review with DCA Legal. And once that is completed, it will go to OAL for review and adoption very soon here. Our next package is the Smog Check Repair Assistance Package. The purpose of this package is to increase Smog Check Repair Assistance participation. It provides higher repair contributions based on vehicle model year, reduces high pre-repair diagnostic fees for low-income vehicle owners, and it removes unnecessary eligibility restrictions pertaining to vehicle registration. The public comment for this package ended on August 3rd, and this is also currently undergoing final review at DCA Legal. And once that is completed, it will go to OAL as well for final review and adoption. The laws and regulations training package amends bar disciplinary guidelines to establish laws and regulations training as a rehabilitative option for respondents. Administrative law judges and bar would have the option to require training in compliance with the Automotive Repair Act and our regulations as a condition of probation or relicensure. The public comment for this package ended on June 2nd, and this is also currently undergoing final review with DCA Legal. And once that is completed, we'll go to OAL. Let's see, this package, this is our auto body equipment and supplemental restraint systems package. And among other things, it requires auto body repair shops to have access to current equipment and reference materials, and that the auto body repair shops meet current trade standards for the work being performed. It also updates language to broaden vehicle restraint system to include supplemental restraint system and its components. This package is currently undergoing final review with DCA Legal, and our next step for this is to publish the notice and begin our public comment period. The citation program for Automotive Repair Act violations, it expands BAR's citation program to cover automotive repair dealer violations of the Act. And we are working on the final text of this package due to the passing of AB 471. Once the proposed text is finalized, we will submit to DCA Legal for informal review. The last two packages I'm going to go over are both part of this afternoon's workshop. It's storage fees for automotive repair dealers and auto body windshield repair. The storage fees package establishes and clarifies an ARD's ability to charge fees for unpaid repair debt and storage and safekeeping of a motor vehicle. And the auto body and windshield repair package defines a reconditioned part. It requires that all auto body and windshield repair meet current accepted trade standards for good and workmanlike repair. And it specifies the use of a nationally distributed updated service specification in cases where there are no OEM service specification repair procedures or guidelines. And again, this package, the auto body windshield repair and the storage fees are both being workshopped this afternoon. That is the end of my regulation update. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Let's open it up for questions and comments from our bar advisory group members. Any hands raised? Again, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so if there is one out there, moderator, please call my attention to it or just speak up, advisory group members. All right, let's move to, we can circle back if there's something that comes to mind. Let's open it up for questions and comments from the public. Moderator, could you do that for us?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the Bureau Chief, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand feature. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing no raised hands or comments in the Q&A, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
All right, any other last Thoughts, questions, comments from the advisory group members before we move to our next agenda item? All right, seeing none, I guess we can close this one out. Thank you very much, Holly.
Thank you.
Got 11 minutes. It looks like Clay's going to be having to pause during his presentation for the earthquake drill at 10:21. We've got 10 minutes. All right, our next agenda item, Enforcement Licensing Modernization, or ELM update. Clay, you've done a few of these presentations preparing our advisory group for some of the big and exciting changes as it relates to modernizing our legacy software systems that support our licensing and enforcement programs. Been around since, well, you were probably in grade school when they were first coded and put into place, but they have been around a long time and are needing a good replacement or updating. So here to give us a status report on where we are with that effort is Clay Leak from our executive office.
All right, thank you very much. So just a quick background in terms of kind of how we got here. You know, going back to early 2010, 2011, the Breeze project was initiated by the Department of Consumer Affairs. The goal of that project was consolidate all regulatory entities under the DCA umbrella into a single licensing and enforcement system. That project had two deployments, which included Release 1 and Release 2. Release 3, which included BAR, was canceled in January of 2015. There are still 18 regulatory entities still using Breeze. The remaining group of DCA entities are basically in the process of seeking to modernize their business processes, which obviously includes BAR. Quick just background in terms of the phases. Phase 1, business readiness activities has been completed. We looked at a lot of as-is business processes, a lot of documentation as part of that phase. Phase 2, which included the development of system requirements and a business needs analysis, has been completed. We've been working through Phase 3 for quite some time, as a lot of you are aware, and continue to work through Phase 3, although I do have a pretty big update in terms of a milestone that was recently completed within the project approval lifecycle. And obviously, Phase 4 will include the actual execution of the project and incremental delivery of the solution. In terms of the project approval lifecycle and where we are at, we had previously reported completion of Stage 1 and Stage 2. I'm really pleased to be able to announce today that we do have approval from the Department of Technology of our Stage 3 procurement analysis as well, which puts us in a position to go ahead and release the solicitation to obtain the necessary services for us to move forward with our modernization project. So really excited about that. And we are really looking forward to getting that request for offer or solicitation out on the street. So in terms of some other pieces and parts that have kind of shifted since last time we spoke about this project, DCA Business Modernization Cohort 1, which includes 4 boards and bureaus. Sorry, and I can't remember all these acronyms, so I did have to write them down. We have the Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists, the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, and the California Acupuncture Board all comprise this cohort or group of boards and bureaus. They procured a solution, a hosted solution, a cloud-based solution from a company called Inlumon, who offers software as a service, licensing and enforcement solutions. They successfully implemented this product in September, and their deployment is going very well. Very successful project. They were able to deploy this functionality in a very short amount of time, and the boards and bureaus are all very pleased with the solution and have really experienced some efficiencies. Another interesting update is that the services to implement this InLumon product are now available through the Department of General Services Software Licensing Program. This is a much more streamlined way to procure implementation services, solutions, products. So in terms of our kind of announcement and our path forward is we do plan to leverage the DGS software licensing program to obtain implementation services to implement the InLumon software as a service solution. So why is that the best answer? Well, we certainly plan to leverage the success of Cohort 1 and all the work that was done to integrate legacy systems with the new solution, to establish interfaces with things like financial interfaces, interfaces with training providers, other interfaces that are required for the solution to be successful. There was also a pretty strategic enterprise investment that was made in the InLumon solution as part of Cohort 1. So there is an enterprise software licensing agreement that is available to BAR. So essentially, we're not paying any more for the software. That software has already been procured, already been bought, which obviously makes the initial investment for this project significantly less than it would be otherwise. There are also additional environment stacks. And when I say an environment stack, I mean a development, a test, and a production environment available as part of this strategic investment made by DCA Cohort 1. We do plan to leverage one of those environment stacks for BAR. Again, another huge cost savings, another huge way to mitigate risk in terms of this modernization project. So those were areas we really felt were important to consider when we looked at the different pathways forward, and certainly have been working very closely with DCA to coordinate all of this, of course. So as I mentioned, we do plan to obtain implementation services to build out an instance of this InLumon solution that meets BAR's specific requirements through the DGS software licensing program. And as I've mentioned before, this project over the last couple years, based on direction from the Department of Finance and Department of Technology, and of course the Department of Consumer Affairs, the scope of this project has gotten a little bit smaller than what we'd originally envisioned. We're very focused on licensing functionality and externally facing functionality. So a lot of the enforcement pieces that we'd originally envisioned being in scope certainly are still important and will still be prioritized, but probably in a second phase of this project. Pat mentioned the limited term position to kind of support 471. We've released a similar limited term position to kind of support a lot of the business focused activities associated with this project. That resource will be really critical in terms of defining requirements for the enforcement solution, and more importantly, helping us kind of break down what is on paper a really large complex project into smaller, more discrete pieces, which will allow us to move forward much more agile, in a much more agile fashion, in a much more incremental fashion, really allowing us to deploy business value as quickly as possible. So excited to get that resource on board, obviously get the request for offer out and get the project started hopefully early next year. I kind of touched on the agile approach. We are still looking to follow that agile approach, deploy a minimally viable product within 10 months is the goal right now from the time the project starts. I will additionally mention that we do have what's called a project delegation request in with CDT because of kind of the dramatic steps we've taken to reduce risk, leverage investments already made by Cohort 1. The department and BAR both felt like this was a project we could really oversee on our own. So this project delegation request, if approved by the Department of Technology, will reduce some of the overhead and some of the reporting requirements to CDT and allow us to streamline some of our project management processes in a way that allows us to move forward a little bit more expeditiously at times and without so much formal oversight, given the minimal scope of this project and really the minimal risk, given that Cohort 1 was so successful and we are kind of following in their footsteps in a lot of ways. So projected timeline, again, I mentioned we're hoping to get this project started early next year. There's still a few moving pieces. With AB 471 getting signed by the governor, we are certainly, going back through our requirements, because that could obviously impact licensing requirements, obviously a new station type and a new inspector type with regards to the safety program. So those are things we just want to make sure we catch and we integrate into the requirements as soon as possible. So, in a year or two from now, when some of those legislatively imposed deadlines come up, we are ready from an IT perspective to have those pieces in place.
All right, Clay, may I pause you for a moment to observe the drop, cover, and hold on during the great shakeout earthquake drill. All DCA employees, bar employees included, are encouraged to join the preparedness effort and drop, cover, and hold on at 10:21. It is 10:21. BAG members and members of the public, feel free to join us. We'll pause for a minute. All right, thank you for observing that, everyone, and appreciate your patience while we interrupted, and Clay, thank you as well, while we interrupted your presentation. Please continue.
Yeah, no worries. I wasn't sure if I should take my laptop under the desk with me or keep it on top of the desk or what. I elected.
Not really sure either.
Elected to leave it on the top. And I think that pretty much concludes the presentation. In summary, we are moving forward with what I think is a really, really good solution, a solution that will allow us to incrementally improve and modernize our business over time. I think this approach has dramatically reduced the risk of a more open approach, an open RFP type approach. And we're really excited that we were able to leverage all the great work that was done by DCA as part of Cohort 1 in terms of product selection, building out interfaces, building out functionality to support different boards and bureaus, and just really looking forward to get this project on the road.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Let's open it up for questions and comments from the Bar Advisory Group. Any questions or comments?
Looks like Nikki has her hand up.
Well, it's just not showing up on my end. I'm sorry for that. I appreciate anyone else who can help me with that part of the moderation. So Nikki Ayers.
I hope I'm on the right subject, but anyway, I apologize if I'm not. Will this help in getting smog license inspectors and their licenses to them much more quickly? Is that not part of this project?
Certainly turning around licenses as quickly as possible is always our goal. This project, I will mention, one of the scope items is including initial licensure in being able to apply for that online. Right now, obviously, that's a paper process. I think one of our goals is to turn those licenses around a little bit faster, and I am optimistic that moving that process to an online process will allow us to do that. That's one of the things we will definitely measure. One of the key performance indicators we will measure as part of this project, and something we definitely have our eyes on.
Okay, because right now, in some cases, and I don't know that it's across the board, but a renewal to get the new badge and to get the new actual license to put on the wall is in some cases taking 6 months. And it's due to somebody, one of your companies not being able to produce the license fast enough. So I'm just wondering where that process lies in all of this. And it just seems to be, you know, just a huge backup somewhere. And the other one is this going to also start telling people further out that they need to renew their license and include the brake and lamp and all of that a little bit faster, maybe even do it online?
Yeah, so in terms of the first question with regard to wall licenses, I'm sorry I'm not in the loop on kind of those production processes. I would probably have to loop in Vince Soma, our licensing manager, to answer that. I know that we have had some issues with printing because EDD is a kind of officially getting out of the printing business. And I know the department has been working to transition away from EDD, which has been a pretty challenging project, which is going on right now. And that may be why. But like I say, I'm not as in the loop on some of those production issues. In terms of getting renewals processed online and having some notifications, yes, those are definitely two items that are in scope. The vision of this new product is you will essentially have a portal as an ARD, you know, as a station or as a technician. And through that portal, you can set those things up kind of with whatever frequency and duration you would like. So yes, a lot more flexibility and functionality in terms of processing both initials and renewals, and also that how those notifications are sent to you moving forward. Yes, those are two items that we absolutely have in scope and something we plan on building.
Okay, thank you.
And Nikki, always, this is Pat DeRay. Always feel free to reach out to me if there's you hear of one of your members or anyone in the industry who's struggling with getting the license renewed for whatever reason, and I'll get right on it and get staff.
Well, I just want to say Vince Soma has been very helpful to me in
Sure.
the few instances there's been a problem. He's been terrific.
Yep.
But when you call in, the answer is, oh, the vendor is very far behind and it can take up to 6 months. And that seems like not an okay answer. And I was just wondering why that's happening. And I didn't know if this update would help that situation. So.
Right. It seems logically to me that a more digitalized electronic process should improve our internal processes and not hopefully be as reliant on other state offices with printing of wall licenses and such, as Clay pointed out. But yeah, the devil will be in the details, as they always say, with respect to that. But my goal is that we would be able to remove some of those dependencies and contingencies for things that can go wrong with paper processes.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm really happy with your office. It's not your office's problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thank you for pointing that out. Other questions and comments from the Bar Advisory Group? Anybody see any hands? I'm not seeing any other hands at this time. We can double back on the members if they come up with something after we open it up for public comment. Moderator, could you please open it up for questions and comments from the public?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the Bureau Chief, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand icon next to your name. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. All right, scanning for any other hands that might be raised from the bar advisory group. Not see any. All right, we'll close out this agenda item, and Clay, I'm sure we'll be seeing you again on this topic as we get some more information about the progress of the project.
Yep, looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right, our next presentation, want to thank, I don't know who to personally thank. It was a recommendation from someone or more than one person from the bar advisory group to give I think Johan Gallo. I'll do a shout out to you for asking for this to be added to the agenda for today at our last meeting. There
I
has been a lot
appreciate
of,
it, Pat.
what's that?
I appreciate it because it's really drawn a lot of attention. I appreciate what BAR has done with their public outreach. And just real quick, I noticed one thing that's happening, which I think is really a great partnership that's working out since this has really been raised as an awareness, is more and more repair shops are working with law enforcement agencies to offer engraving of these catalytic converters and different ways to protect them from being stolen. So your postings on Facebook and other social media on this has really raised the awareness, and more shops are offering to help consumers protect their catalytic converters. And the other thing I've learned since this has really jumped to the fore is the frustration law enforcement has is they cannot get the metal scrap yards to cooperate with them and collect driver's license information on those trying to sell them. And so their hands are really tied on trying to get the scrap industry to cooperate and work with them to identify people that are trying to turn these in. So again, shout out back to you to thank you for raising the awareness on this, because it's really driven repair shops to get engaged.
All right, thank you for that intro to the presentation and our presenter today, Terry O'Neill with the Engineering and Research Branch here at the Bureau of Automotive Repair, oversees is kind of the point person on all things relating to the referee program. Terry previously was with the Sacramento field office as a program representative and has recently joined the Engineering and Research Branch in this new role. So congratulations and welcome, Terry, to the Bar Advisory Group. I look forward to your presentation today.
Thank you, Pat. As all of you are aware, this is a problem that's not just here in California. Throughout the world, there's experiencing the same problem. There's a lot of questions about what we should do. It is a problem that impacts the consumers because it's their car that's been vandalized or had the parts stolen off of it. It's a problem that affects the industry when the consumer brings the vehicle to them to have it repaired. And it's a problem for the Bureau because there isn't always a converter available to repair the vehicle. So that's a startling number, reported to be about 1,600 converter thefts per month statewide. That's a number that's been trending upwards. There was a report released this spring by the National Insurance Crime Bureau, NICB, and that study showed that in 2018, the average per month was 108 converters. Then in 2019, it was 282 converters. 2020, it skyrocketed to 1,203 converters on average per month based on regional statistics that are collected by them. So the theft of an under vehicle catalytic converter only takes a short period of time. Most people would be surprised how quickly that a Sawzall will take a converter out of a car. The targeted vehicles are usually, they go in trends. Right now it's Toyota Priuses, which is starting to drop in the trend. Hondas, the Accords, especially the PZEV or the SULEV vehicles. And the reason why they're looking at those vehicles is the amount of precious metal contained within the catalytic converter to accomplish the emissions reduction is significantly higher in those types of vehicles. But it doesn't mean that trucks and buses and other SUVs aren't being targeted as well. The cost of the metal, again, it's something that's driven by the situation that the world's in, the current situation where everybody's unsure of what's going to happen leads people to invest in precious metals such as gold. So the catalytic converter has 3 precious metals that are openly traded as a commodity. So there's the platinum, the palladium, and the rhodium. And the vehicles such as the Toyota and the Honda would tend to have higher levels or concentrations of the palladium and the rhodium, and that's why they're targeted. Just to get a concept of what those metals are worth, the platinum, last time I checked, was about $1,000 an ounce. The palladium is $2,100 an ounce, and the rhodium is $14,000 an ounce. Those all take spikes, and at one point, rhodium was $30,000 an ounce. The repair costs are associated with not only the price of the converter that's been stolen, but usually there's incidental damage to the surrounding area. The person that's removing it is not thinking about how to repair the vehicle. They're just interested in stealing the part so that they can then take it to the salvage yard. So this is an example picture of a catalytic converter. So the motive is the value of the scrap catalytic converter. And then this is the opportunity. The opportunity is that the manufacturer, aside from close coupled catalyst, is going to put it somewhere that's convenient in the vehicle with other considerations such as the heat load that's transferred to the underbody of the vehicle. So now we have a vehicle that they crawl underneath or they jack it up and grab the Sawzall, and within a couple minutes, the part is gone from your car. This is a crime scene photo from a law enforcement agency that they pulled over a vehicle that didn't look like it belonged in the area, obtained permission to search the vehicle, and this is what was in the trunk. And as you can see, there are all different size, shapes, and quantity of catalytic converters that in the morning when those people get up, they're going to start the ignition and be astounded by a sound like a pack of Harley Davidsons coming by in the morning. And that's usually how people find out that they're a victim of this crime. So the converter thefts create challenges for the repair industry. There's a shortage of converters. The normal supply chain is intended to keep up with the demand of aging vehicles, that the converter is no longer operating efficiently and it's become known to the driver or through some other means that the check engine light is on or they failed their biennial smog inspection. And then there's the demand that's put on the supply chain by the new vehicle manufacturers in order to produce vehicles. Because of the elevated price for the precious metals, manufacturers are spending several $billion every year for new vehicles just to equip them with the catalytic converters. Then now we have this sudden rash of thefts, and it has overtaxed what was traditionally able to be met the demand that was on the supply chain. So the shortage of converters has led the Bureau, in conjunction with the Air Resources Board, to develop a strategy to accommodate people that do not have a catalytic converter. We'll talk about that later a little bit more. Theft prevention. Nobody wants to have to spends $4,000 on their vehicle because it's not part of their budget. And then smog testing procedures. Once the vehicle has been repaired, now is that vehicle going to be able to pass its biennial smog inspection? So the aftermarket catalytic converters, they are all assigned an executive order. The executive order has numbers that are used to identify the manufacturer of the part, the series of the part, and the actual application. And the problem is that some vehicles, such as the example SULEV or PZEV, there may not be any aftermarket support. And so now they have to turn to the manufacturer, they have to go to the dealership, and the dealership with a PZEV is going to offer a warranty for up to 15 years, depending on the vehicle or SULEV. And now their normal expectation for the stock that they're going to need to have in place to accommodate that warranty is being overtaxed. So we end up with a consumer that doesn't have an alternative for an aftermarket cat, can't get one from the manufacturer. And part of what law enforcement that is taking all of the calls for, somebody stole my cat, they've been educated to know to point the consumer to the state referee's website, asktheref.org. And the call center is seeing as many as 500 calls per month with people that are trying to ascertain what would be an acceptable part to put on their vehicle. So when we do end up putting an alternative part, the alternative part, going back to the consultation with ARB, ARB has the data, the information, the ability to look at what was taken off the vehicle, and they're looking at the loading of the converter, how much precious metal is in it, the area, the surface area that the exhaust gases pass over, other basic considerations like the operating conditions, is it a passenger car, a truck? And then using that information, they're able to look at something that is still currently available that would be suitable as an interim means of restoring that vehicle to service. Once the query for a suitable replacement is satisfied through the call center at the referee, then a muffler shop or a repair garage is engaged to repair the vehicle, and then an appointment is made at the referee. And during that appointment, the referee verifies that it's the one that was recommended by ARB and that it's properly installed, and then they memorialize that authorization on a bar referee label. And that's the traditional label that would be used for an engine change or a gray market vehicle. And on the label, it includes the executive order number and the part number, and that label is good for the life of the vehicle. And that should be sufficient to get people through the smog check program, the biennial smog check program. So a lot of times the manufacturer, their lag time will be an unacceptable amount of time. Say the family only has one vehicle, and so that's where this will come into play. The other consideration is the manufacturer on a PZEV vehicle. So the preferred alternative is that we get an OEM converter for PZEV or something else that has a substantial amount of warranty life remaining. That being said, it's not always going to be a possibility. And so now we're left with the suitable alternative, and the manufacturer of those approved aftermarket converters, part of what they're agreeing to do when they petition ARB for approval of that part is they're agreeing to offer a 5-year warranty. That 5-year warranty is there on the part, and sometimes that's going to exceed the remaining life of the manufacturer's warranty for the new vehicle. So another consideration is the executive order number. is only approved for use on this vehicle exactly as shown on the label. And once the supply chain, the current burden on the supply chain is relieved, then the alternative converter process will not be a method for repair in the future. So theft deterrence, because nobody wants to spend $4,000. Some of the ideas that are presented are from many different sources. Some of them are common sense, such as parking in a well-lit area, putting a motion sensor, a motion sensor alarm on your vehicle if it's not already equipped from the factory with one. As was mentioned previously, etching the converter shell with identifying information. That's important because when the police report is taken, it looks like a pile of converters when it's in the trunk of the car, as I showed you in that previous picture. And then when they're in a giant pile at the scrapyard, again, it looks like a giant pile of converters. And being able to say with certainty, without taking it back to the victim vehicle and trying to fit it in the now vacant hole, assuming it hasn't been replaced yet, it's very hard to tie the evidence with the actual victim of the crime. So putting the vehicle identification number or the license plate number, that's important because it provides the law enforcement agency investigating the crime with the opportunity to complete the chain to then prosecute the person that they have caught with those stolen pieces. One other suggestion that's not on the slide is if you don't already have one, a motion sensitive light in your driveway. There are statistics that show that the light will be a deterrent to the people that are attempting to do this. Most thefts occur in the middle of the night. Some of them are brazen and they occur in the mall in the middle of broad daylight. It's not a hard and fact statistic either way for which one has the greater level of occurrence, but most crimes are occurring at night. There's a number of companies that have seen the opportunity to market a device, a theft prevention device. Some of those are cages, some of those are plates or shields that go into the underbody of the vehicle that are attached with one-way screws. Chains. Some people are welding in place pieces of rebar. I've seen a number of different ways. But the important thing to remember is that all vehicles eventually, based on the age of the vehicle, will become subject to the smog check program. So in order to avoid a future failure of your smog inspection, there are certain things that need to be kept in mind. You never want to weld to the shell of the converter because there's concern that the integrity of the shell will be compromised or damage to the substrate within the shell. You don't want to obscure or prevent the inspection of the numbers that are on the shell for identification purposes. And then there's also the concern that the necessary ventilation for the converter is going to be impeded by a device that's then bolted on the underbody of the car. So here's an example of one that was at the state referee for a label. However, when it came to the referee, they noticed that these pieces of pipe and chain had been welded to the shell. And so they, at that time, asked the consumer to return to the installer. And because the part is hard to get and there's limited supply, the concession was made to remove the pieces of pipe and the chain and then to grind the welds down to allow visual inspection to show that the integrity of the shell had not been compromised. This is another example of somebody using reed bar to create an obstacle to simply crawling underneath the vehicle and cutting it off in a couple minutes. It would take significantly longer for the thief to cut through all of this reed bar, or at least enough of it so that they could slide the converter out after they cut it free from the exhaust. And that's the main idea of most of the devices, to make it so that when the thief looks at the vehicle, they decide to go somewhere else to get something that's easier to do. This is an example of an aftermarket, just basically a shield that's attached with one-way fasteners. And in the middle, near the company logo, you can see that they left a window in that laser cut design that allows for inspection of the actual part number on the converter. But again, there's the consideration of the heat load that's underneath the vehicle. So this is an example of a converter that has the license plate engraved on the shell of the converter, and that is a positive means of identification. When the part is stolen, it can now be associated with the vehicle that it was stolen from. And this would not constitute a failure of an emissions inspection because they didn't obscure or render illegible the executive order number that's either laser etched or with a plate attached. I'll open it up to questions.
Terry, thank you. What a really excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. Obviously, I've seen it a few times in getting it ready for today's presentation by you. But let's open it up for comments from the Bar Advisory Group members, comments or questions. Any questions or comments? I don't see any. Let's open it up.
This is the co-moderator. I'm afraid I do see a hand raised from Megan McKernan.
I do see one. Now that feature is now working on my computer.
Wonderful.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay,
Megan
thank
McKernan.
you.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, hi, Pat. No problem. Yeah, so, it was a great presentation, a lot of good information there. Just kind of wanted to mention, obviously, being AAA, our members are being affected by the rise in these thefts. And then, of course, we have our insurance company, so we're seeing a lot of claims. So for us, down here in Southern California, we have been trying to partner with local police departments on holding some events to allow members to bring their vehicles to do the license plate etching on the cats. And we would be open to partnering somehow or getting some additional, help in trying to arrange these kind of events from, anybody here, whether it be from the bar. Just so I wanted to just mention that, the Auto Club, for many years, we've done windshield VIN etching events for car theft. And that's why we kind of decided to do this for the cats because of this increase in theft. So just kind of wanted to let the audience know that we are doing things like this. In addition to that, our approved auto repair facilities are definitely taking an interest in being places where people can go and have the shields and other theft deterrent devices attached.
All right, Megan, thank you so much for the invitation to look at some partnership opportunities. I'm going to put someone from our staff in touch with you, Tessa Miller.
Okay, great.
Oversees our program support unit and has a lot of interaction with our department's public affairs office, can look at some opportunities for us to some further outreach together and maybe some events together. Who knows exactly what might be out there for us to do in this area, but I would like to explore that further, and I appreciate your offer and invitation to do so.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the Bar Advisory Group?
I have a question, Pat.
Yeah, Jack Maladona with the California Auto Body Association.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Terry. really good presentation. I had heard there were some concerns with regard to diesel converters and no aftermarket replacements, and then they can't get the OE converters. You've heard any, and they're just having difficulties with the diesel. Do you have any comment on that?
So currently the authorization that ARB has to create the executive order for aftermarket catalytic converters, that's in 2222 of the California Code of Regulations, does not include diesel vehicles. And that's not only for California. There are other state agencies that we have met with in recent times, and there are discussions about it, but currently in California, there is no provision in the law for ARB to review and then issue executive orders for diesel powered vehicles.
So what happens to a consumer who gets their catalytic converter, the diesel one, stolen, and they can't find a replacement? What are their options?
So 1998 and newer diesel vehicles are subject to the Smog check program. So I'll address that part of the vehicle population. Older than that, then they're not subject to the biennial inspection program. So the 98 and newer vehicles, if they've been a victim of the catalytic converter theft and there is no manufacturer available catalytic converter, then their path is also through the referee through a limited parts exemption. And that's specified in the Health and Safety Code. And so basically what happens is there's a search made by the referee parts locator service to confirm that there are no parts available. If there are parts available through the parts locator service, then the consumer is referred to that resource and required to put that on their vehicle to pass smog. If in fact there are no OEM converters available, then at that point, they will receive a limited parts exemption that is basically a certificate or in lieu of a smog certificate that allows them to complete the registration process.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional questions or comments from any other bar advisory group members? I see David Kusa with the Automotive Service Councils of California has his hand raised.
Good morning, Pat. Thank you, Terry. Is there any consumer assistance available for cats that are stolen?
So again, the provisions in the Health and Safety Code and the California Code of Regulations that enable us to do the consumer assistance program at BAR do not include repairing vehicles that are the victim of a theft in this case. And ultimately, there's other prohibitions in the Health and Safety Code. When the vehicle comes to its biennial smog inspection, assuming the cat's been stolen, then that missing pollution control device legally causes it to fail as a tampered vehicle. Not that it was tampered on the part of the consumer, but as a result of the theft. And so the Consumer Assistance Program has a prohibition against performing repairs to tampered vehicles. Not because that's not what we want to do, but because there are other reasons that vehicles end up in the category of being tampered. I have some limited knowledge of other outside of a government agency or a pseudo government agency that are currently looking into that. So something that's intended to help people in a economically disadvantaged area, such as the Valley Can program. Valley Can is exploring helping consumers because their main concern is that $4,000 price tag for some of the people that are in the area that they serve exceeds the value of the vehicle, and that there's no way that that person that is driving that vehicle could possibly afford to foot the bill for that repair. And so that's where they're looking into stepping in.
Thank you. One other question too. So, part of the supply chain issue isn't necessarily that we'll never see a converter for a particular vehicle, but sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 weeks out. Hard for many people to be without their car that long. Prius is a great example, right? Where a temporary repair would be just to weld in a piece of exhaust pipe, make the vehicle usable and drivable. Clearly, it wouldn't pass smog. But as a temporary repair, would that be an acceptable solution, or would a shop, be opening themselves for some issues?
I think I'll point to US EPA regulations to answer that, as well as parallel regulations from ARB. It's basically illegal to weld what was previously referred to as a test pipe when converters were prone to plugging and causing the vehicle to not operate properly. So just welding a piece of pipe in there, I understand that will reduce the noise level, but it's prohibited by federal and California regulation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent questions, Dave. I will add that we have had some discussions with the California Air Resources Board and management and staff at our own consumer assistance program, the repair assistance that runs the repair assistance and vehicle retirement programs about possibly looking at, I assume it's going to be legislation that's going to require legislation and regulations to open it up for any extension of repair assistance to what essentially is an MMD situation, missing, modified, disconnected, tampered condition of the vehicle due to a theft, to potentially allow for that. There is nothing that currently allows it, as Terry noted, but we have started discussing that with our friends at the California Air Resources Board.
Pat, this is John Gallo. I just wanted to go back to Megan's comments, and one of the things that we found that really helps is if their locations want to contact the local police department. I know, as an example, I sent you, Firestone did it with Baldwin Park and other law enforcement agencies. They contact the watch commander and then work with the police department to set up the schedule and how they're going to do it, the public outreach and all of that. So one of the things that, just for everybody on the call and also in the audience, if you want to work with a local law enforcement, best thing to do is contact the watch commander, explain to them what you're offering to do, and then they can work with you with a public outreach to get the information out to the community on what you're offering to do and the options that they have available. I also want to comment on Terry's presentation because there is so much great information in there. I would suggest that you take some of that, especially when it comes to what a consumer has to do when their catalytic converter is stolen, because many of them do not realize they need to go to a referee, all the different steps they have to go through to then get the car ready for when they go back in and have a smog check. So again, great presentation, a lot of great information. I think just the mere fact of publishing how much these metals are worth will get the consumers to understand why they've been victimized and why it's so important to protect that catalytic converter.
Great comments, Johan, and thank you also for sending me the flyer. Very catchy. Etch and Catch, it's called, the Catalytic Converter Theft Prevention event scheduled for Wednesday, November 3rd, 6 to 8 p.m. in Baldwin Park, sponsored by, it looks like, Firestone Complete Auto Care and the Baldwin Park Police Association. So thank you for your leadership and putting our eyes on this event. Hopefully there can be more of them out there in the communities around the state. If anyone wants a copy of that, just reach out to Johan and I'm sure he can send it to you. Any other questions and comments on this presentation from the Bar Advisory Group? Not seeing hands raised. We can open it up for public comment and questions. Moderator, could you please do that?
All right, this is the moderator at the direction of the Bureau Chief. I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, you can either click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand feature. And I do have a request from individual identified as Jean Lopez. Jean, I will request to unmute your microphone. Please click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, you are unmuted.
Good morning, Chief DeRay. Good morning, BAG members. And Terry, thank you for a great presentation. One thing that I think is missing, and maybe I'm just not aware of it, is recycled parts. I'm sure the auto recyclers have tons of these catalytic converters, and can you explain why these are not available for use?
So a little bit of history. There's a federal rule known as the Brownsville Recycling Rule, and that is from the late 90s. And in the early 2000s, there was provision through ARB to install a converter from a vehicle, in other words, a salvage one. And that provision through ARB required testing for quality control, basically a bench test to show that when known gases were passed through it, the desired emissions reduction was occurring. And then, unfortunately, the provision to do that, there were abuses of that provision, but there were also other concerns for vehicles that were still under warranty at the manufacturer level. A lot of different concerns led to, during the planning for the now version of 2222, that in that revision of what is okay for an aftermarket converter in California, there was no longer a provision to install a used catalytic converter. That started January 1st, 2009. So for a significant period of time now, there has been no provision for used converters in the state of California. And part of the concern too, looking at it from a different perspective, is if the converter is worth money to somebody that's salvaging the precious metal out of it, why would it not be worth money to somebody that stole it and then sold it back to unsuspecting consumers? So there's that concern in the background as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, it does, and that's a great answer. But I think with the difficulties of obtaining one of these, either an OEM device that are short on supply, perhaps the conversation around recycled or salvaged parts needs to come to the forefront. And I get that, well, now that they're available in a recycled market, that more may be stolen then. And in the past, there may have been some tests that were required before you could put this on a vehicle. I think a consumer who could purchase this device, the catalytic converter, for, I don't know, let's say something less than $1,000 when it's going to cost them $4,000. I think a consumer might be willing to take the risk of, okay, put it on and let's go get a smog check and see if it works. I mean, that's the test, isn't it?
So there is a requirement for a 5-year warranty, and I think as a used part vendor, I would be hesitant. Having owned my own garage, I know what my warranty was on repairs. I don't know if I would want to be a used part vendor under the requirement to offer a 5-year warranty to the end purchaser or the end user. And the other thing is most of the dismantlers that realize that part of the car, whether it be a self-service dismantler where they put the cars out for the consumers to get the parts, or one that stocks them on the shelf, they're removing the converter from the vehicle and then they are doing the salvage operation, which is probably more profitable for them. It's usually $300 or $400 for that used converter, and that's instant cash back in their pocket for the initial purchase price from Copart or somewhere like that when they buy a totaled vehicle.
Yeah, it just seems that this conversation should continue with ARB and anyone else who realizes the cost that the consumer has to go through for a replacement when there are just so many available in the salvage yards. So thank you, Terry.
Additional comments from the public?
This is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests from the Q&A feature or raised hands. Would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Thank you also, Jean Lopez. Good to see you again. Always a pleasure to have your participation and attendance at these meetings. All right, any other comments from the Bar Advisory Group? We'll circle back here. I do not see any other comments. Thank you again, Terry, and we'll look forward to continuing to work on getting the word out and partnering with those who, such as AAA of Southern California and even Northern California, perhaps, on some events to get the word out. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to our next presentation. This was also a recommendation from the Bar Advisory Group. Bud Rice, who serves as an alternate member to the California Automotive Business Coalition, he had suggested that we get some real-world experiences represented at these meetings, and some of our complaint mediation efforts to bring those to light in a more public fashion without necessarily disclosing the name of the shop or the consumer. Redacting that information has been done. But that was a request that came forward at our last meeting, and I thought that was an outstanding idea, and would like to potentially make this a recurring feature of our meetings. Maybe if not every meeting, that might be a little bit too much to ask of our staff, but maybe every couple of meetings we'll do one. Maybe every other meeting we'll have a presentation on a case study, if you will. And here to give us today's presentation, our first ever case study presentation, is Rob Wright. Rob is with the Riverside Field Office, and Derek Bryant. I'm escaping me which field office. I know it's a Northern California one. Derek, welcome to both of you. Take it away, complaint and investigation process.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Everybody see the presentation slides okay?
I see the first slide.
All right, good deal. So I'll first introduce myself. My name's Rob Wright. I work with the Riverside Field Office as a program representative too. I've been with the Bureau just over 15 and a half years, and among other things, I specialize in the documentation requirements of the Automotive Repair Act, and I've done hundreds of presentations like this and many Write It Right presentations, designed a lot of things over the years. So today I'll be covering the bar complaint investigation expectations, just kind of an overview of that. We'll be doing a conceptual or summary view of documentation requirements. We'll do an estimates and authorization overview, and we'll cover just snippets of the documentation requirements, what would normally be presented in a Write It Right presentation, specifically pertaining to additional authorization and unusual circumstance estimate authorization elements. And then we'll go through a teardown estimate overview. Again, high-level stuff. It really gets in depth on some of these Write It Right presentations, but just wanted to see what I could do to help out in this regard. And then at the end, if time permits, we'll do a question and answer period after the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Go over mouse here. All right, so I'd like to first explain why we investigate complaints and what provides our specific authority to make recommendations. And that would be under California and Business and Professions Code 9882.5. And it states in pertinent part, the director shall on his or her own initiative or in response to complaints investigate on a continuous basis and gather evidence of violations of this chapter. The director may suggest measures that, in the director's judgment, would compensate for any damages suffered as a result of an alleged violation. Okay, so let's start with the bar complaint investigation steps. First off, the consumer can file a complaint, and they can do that by phone, by fax, do it in person at one of the field offices, and alternatively, one of the best resources is on our website, bar.ca.gov. And if they click on the consumer tab, that will lead you to a consumer complaint form where they just fill it out online, and it will be sent in through BAR and then distributed to the necessary field office, or the applicable field office rather. So after that's done, the next thing we're going to do is contact the consumer. We're going to collect their supporting documents and interview them, find out their side of the story. And then we're going to contact the repair dealer. We're going to interview them, get their side of the story, and collect their records. At that point, we'll do an analysis of the Automotive Repair Act documentation requirements and overall general compliance. And then we'll make a recommendation of what we see might mediate the complaint, again, based on that 9882.5 ability to make a suggestion. So after that point, we'll create a report that will stay in the master file for the business. And that's about it. That's the whole complaint report process or complaint investigation process in a very condensed version. So next up, the documentation workflow. I've created something that hopefully will help people out. And really you can think of it as a giant arrow that only goes one direction, and the steps cannot be skipped or reordered. So first off, let's start with an initial estimate. You have to have an estimate for a specific job at a specific price presented to the customer. And at that point, you're gaining the customer's authorization for that estimate for a specific job. Okay, once you obtain that authorization and record it, you are to then do that job, whether that be diagnosis or work, whatever was on the first estimate. And if there's a revision needed, then you go around and create a revised estimate. And you present that to the customer and gain their authorization, record it, and there are certain requirements we'll cover. And then you can do that diagnosis or work, repeat that cycle as many times as you need. We invite you to do it the fewer the better. It shows the customer you know what you're doing the first time. And then after you're all done doing this cycle, you create your final invoice, and that's your whole transaction, okay? Let's talk about a conceptual item such as a pyramid, right? It's kind of an analogy that I made. So how do you build a pyramid? Certainly not from the top down, right? So you're going to go from the bottom up, level by level. So think of each of those levels as an estimate with authorization. And so that's what this looks like, right? The first estimate is your foundation to your pyramid. And here's why that's important, right? Here's the law, the BMP or Business and Professions Code 9884.9 subsection A. The automotive repair dealer shall give to the customer a written estimated price for labor and parts necessary for a specific job. I gave emphasis there. No work shall be done and no charges shall accrue before authorization to proceed is obtained from the customer. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. If you've got the first estimate solid, you've got authorization good from the customer, you can move on to your next step and you solidify your second estimate, and so forth and so on. However many estimates you generate or revisions you generate, that all has to be documented on your work order and then transferred to your final invoice. Again, you cap off your whole transaction with an invoice, okay? So let's take a look at some more conceptual items. So how do you set the customer expectations? Because ultimately the goal of the documentation requirements and the estimates and authorization is to set the customer's expectations and meet the customer expectations. So think about this, the scope for the customer's expectations varies greatly, but how does that go? Well, the shop has intentions of what they intend on doing. The goal is to match those customer intentions with, the repairer intentions with the customer expectations. And you do that with your estimate terms. Okay, so you set your customer expectations through your initial estimate and your revisions. That includes a specific job at a specific price and, of course, your customer authorization. Okay, so how do you meet your customer expectations? Well, first off, you don't want to exceed the estimated and authorized work without first having your customer authorization. That's very important. You only do the estimated and authorized repairs. There's no such thing as, hey, while your vehicle was in for repairs, I did this or that. There shouldn't be any surprises. It's what we call the 5 o'clock surprise. They should not have any surprises when they pick up their vehicle, other than maybe sales tax. Okay. And of course, you want to explain your repairs on your invoice so the customer can understand what was purchased, what parts you installed. Okay. Moving along. Is about additional authorization. Sometimes there's questions about what you need to document on your work order. Okay, and we have several different methods of authorization that are available to you as September 13th, 2018, rather. We opened it up to go completely paperless if you would like to do that. So our regulations will accommodate that. So I'm going to cover additional authorization and several other little aspects, mainly because it's involved in Derek's particular case study. All right, so one of the first methods you have is a written authorization or additional authorization. Think of that being as in person, okay? Next, you have oral. Think of that like a phone call. Next, there's electronic, and you can think of that as text messages, emails, faxes, okay? And each of those authorization methods has a different requirement for what's supposed to be recorded. For instance, on the written, you need a customer signature and the date of signing. Our position right now is that if the customer's signature is the same as the repair order date, then they don't need to place the date. However, if you print the work order or generate the work order on one date and the customer is signing on a different date, there needs to be a date of signature recorded on the work order. For oral authorization, you're going to need to record on the work order, and this can be on whether an electronic work order or a written work order after 2018. So you're going to have the customer's name who authorized repairs, the date they authorized it, the time they authorized it, the phone number that you called, and if the customer calls in, you just document that they called in. You wouldn't have to record a phone number. The second being, or the fifth reason is the reason for the increase or the reason for the change in the method of repair. And then there's the total additional cost and the total revised cost. So how much did it increase and what is the total now? Okay, all those are required. And you can see that electronic is nearly identical. The only difference being that on electronic, you're going to record the phone number that maybe you text messaged or you sent the fax to. Or the email address that you were sent and received the customer's authorization from. All the rest is identical. So next, let's move on to unusual circumstances authorization. And as a reminder, there's only two circumstances that are unusual as far as the laws are concerned. And at first is if it's towed in with the customer, towed in without the customer, or it's presented to the shop outside of your normal business hours, and you can think of that as early bird. And you'll hear that term on Derek's presentation, and that's where that comes from. Okay, so there's two documentation methods for unusual circumstances authorization. First, being oral, just like the last, and then, of course, electronic. Each of those has their own requirements. Oral or the phone call has the name, date, time, and phone number called. The electronic would be the name, date, time, and phone number if text messaged or faxed, or email address if emailed. Okay. We would not expect to see a customer's signature on an unusual circumstances authorization because they're not there to be able to sign that. Okay. Moving on to teardowns. Again, we're just touching on some of the items here. These are some of the required elements of what to put on a teardown estimate. First, you're going to have the odometer reading. That's a very important element. Again, we go in depth on our Right at Right presentations about the importance of the odometer reading, but Next, you'll need your customer requested repairs. In other words, why are they bringing it to you? You're going to need your specific job. And in this case of a teardown, some people say, well, how do I know what the specific job is until I tear it down? Well, no, that is the specific job, is the teardown area. So describe what you're tearing down and what area and parts that will be removed. That, again, contributes to your specific job. Next is your specific price. And a reminder that that includes your reassembly price with all new gaskets, seals, and O-rings that are destroyed by disassembly. Okay, so you need to estimate high enough to cover those costs. Next is what I call the Humpty Dumpty rule. The statement, if you cannot reassemble the vehicle or the component of the vehicle as it was presented to you, an instance of this would be, let's say, a collision where you're doing collision repairs and you're estimating it by doing a teardown. You take off the front bumper cover, but it's so mangled, you're going to have to use a sawzall to cut the thing off the vehicle. In that case, you can't put it back together, and that's exactly what that element would be for. It's to explain it to your customer and put that in writing on the estimate. Next, you have to have the number of days or the time it will take you to reassemble the vehicle in the event the customer declines your recommended repairs after teardown. Okay, so that's it's important so that you're not dragging out the repairs after it might be considered a non-paying job at that point. Almost last, you're going to have the unique identifier. This is something new as of September 2018, where you've got to put some sort of unique identifier that these documents cannot be confused with other documents or transactions. The easiest way to comply with that is an invoice number, estimate number, work order number. Okay. And lastly, you're going to need your sublet disclosure. Again, a sublet is anytime you're taking the vehicle or a component of the vehicle to another facility for work or bringing another facility's technicians into your facility to do that work. And you are responsible for that sublet as if you did it yourself. So that's just part of our sublet rules. And again, it's only if it's applicable. If you intend on doing the full repair by yourself as a shop, then you don't need to have that disclosure. But you should explain it to your customer because ultimately they trust you to do the repairs, not someone else. So you need to get their permission essentially for having someone else do it. With that, I'll go ahead and toss it off to Derek Bryant from the Fresno Field Office. He'll give you some insight into a recent complaint investigation. Take it away, Derek.
Thank you, Rob. This is Pat DeRay, interjecting just real quickly. Thank you so much for the first half of kind of setting up the presentation for second half of the presentation from Derek. And Derek, my apologies, Fresno Field Office.
Yes, Pat, thank you. So my name's Derek Bryant, PR2 with the Fresno Field Office. I've been with the Bureau coming up on 10 years. And this morning I'm going to share a case study on a complaint investigation that Rob and I worked on a consumer complaint that the Bureau received regarding a 2012 Jeep Wrangler the consumer had taken to a repair facility to have a leaking pinion seal diagnosed. In the complaint, the consumer alleged that the repair facility performed work he was unaware of and he did not authorize. So the complaint was received by the Bureau and assigned to a bar rep who contacted the consumer and discussed the allegations. The consumer explained that he had taken the vehicle to his regular repair facilities before their normal business hours. He had gone to that repair facility for numerous times, numerous vehicles. He dropped it off using their early bird envelope. He received a call from the repair facility later that day and was given an estimate in the amount of $1,600, which he authorized. When he returned to pick up his vehicle a few days later, he was presented with an invoice in the amount of $2,002.52. The consumer alleged he was never contacted regarding the additional repair costs of $400. The bar representative requested and received copies of the consumer's documents and then contacted the repair facility. He discussed the consumer's complaint and allegation with the repair facility, and the bar representative also requested all documents pertaining to the repairs to the consumer's vehicle. The repair facility provided an early bird envelope, an estimate, and an invoice. However, no parts receipts were provided. The bar representative requested to have the repair facility explain the repair transaction in detail. So the repair facility stated the consumer completed an early bird drop-off envelope, and that authorized them to begin the repair of the diagnosis. After they determined the pinion seal leak was caused by loose pinion bearings, they contacted the consumer and provided him with an estimate to pull the differential assembly and inspect it for other problems. The estimate included a bearing kit, and the customer authorized this repair. During the repair, a bolt for the wheel bearing broke off, and it was necessary to replace the wheel bearing assembly in order to complete the job. The repair facility claimed the consumer implied authorization by paying the invoice at the end of the job. So the bar representative reviewed the documents provided by the repair facility, determined the following. The repair facility did not comply with unusual circumstance authorization requirements as described in Business and Professions Code 988-4.9, which pertains to estimate and authorization requirements, and California Code of Regulations 3353.2, when they did not contact the consumer and obtain or record their authorization to diagnose the pinion seal leak beginning. The repair facility did not comply with specific estimate requirements as described in California Code of Regulation 3353A when they recorded still seems to be a leak at a pinion seal and did not specifically describe what they were going to do as a result of the consumer concerns. So some of these things I'm reading are going to be on the invoices that follow, and I'll call those out separately. This is just a record of what the consumer or what the Bureau rep found at the time. The repair facility did not comply with teardown estimates as described in California Code of Regulations 3353C1 when they did not record the maximum time it would take to reassemble the vehicle if the customer declined the repair. The repair facility did not comply with additional authorization requirements as described in California Code of Regulations 3354A1 when the repair facility failed to provide the customer with the additional parts and labor for the wheel bearing assembly. And finally, the repair facility did not comply with records requirements as described in Business and Profession Code 988-4.11 and California Code of Regulations 3358 when they did not make available for inspection or reproduction parts invoices as requested by the bar representative. So here is the early bird notice that was provided by the repair facility. The early bird notice does not comply with estimate and authorization requirements. There is no specific job or price to authorize even if the customer did sign it. Early bird forms are only a means of obtaining the customer's keys and contact information. So this would not be an authorization. The repair facility did create an estimate after collecting the early bird notice. However, it is missing the unusual circumstance authorization that is required. And the description, here's where that description still seems to be a leaking pinion seal, is not a specific job to be performed. So I said at the end of the repair, an invoice was created. However, the final cost was increased by $400 for a wheel bearing replacement. The authorization documentation indicates a teardown was performed when the repair facility listed pull to inspect. Pull to inspect as a reason for the additional amount. The teardown estimate is missing the number of days to reassemble, as well as the amount the estimate will be increased. The documentation of the estimate approvals shows an original approval date of 7/16/21 and a revised approval date of 7/13/21. This creates a misleading record. It's kind of confusing since the final approval is on the top under original. I note here that as a result of the complaint investigation, it was determined that the facility did not obtain and or record additional initial authorization. And at the start, they weren't entitled to compensation at that point, as Rob's pyramid indicated. But in order to educate the repair facility, the Bureau reviews all deficiencies and discusses them with the repair facility to educate them. The bar representative was able to confirm the consumer's allegation and determine the repair facility failed to properly record authorization. Based on the compliance issues found during the bar's complaint investigation, the bar representative found the repair facility was not entitled to $2,002.52. After the bar representative reviewed his findings with the repair facility and made his recommendations, the repair facility offered to comply with the consumer's request and refund $400. The repair facility also promised to correct their estimate and authorization practices. The outcome of this complaint investigation was a resolution that the consumer was satisfied with, and the repair facility was educated by bar on estimate and authorization requirements. This case study highlights the results and outcome that can occur when a repair facility does not comply with the Automotive Repair Act requirements, as Rob highlighted in his presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. That was my case study.
Great job, Derek. Thank you both to Rob and Derek for an outstanding presentation. I was curious how that would go with all the pop-ups. I thought it went really well. Good job. Let's open it up for some questions and comments. Anything of note from the Bar Advisory Group?
I have a question. This is Jack.
I'm not seeing. Oh, there's your hand. First one up. Jack Maladonoff with the California Auto Body Association.
Thank you. Good presentation. Thank you both. I have just a question. I guess it was with Rob's presentation with regard to the teardown estimate. Rob, if you can go to that screen or that shot, if that's possible.
Sure, hang on a second. Sorry for the rapid rewind. There we go.
Yeah, so number 3, specific job area components to be torn down. I wasn't clear on that because I know 3353 in terms of tear down just requires you to put the price you're going to tear down. For example, if it's an auto body job, you're going to dismantle the vehicle. And are you suggesting there, or maybe I'm misinterpreting, that you have to list the components you're going to be taking off the vehicle, or am I reading that wrong?
Well, I mean, it all contributes to a specific job about, if you're going to be as vague as tear down vehicle, well, it's kind of like repair vehicle. It can't get any more vague. So I would advise to put more things to specify what area you're going to tear down. If it is a collision in the front end, then why would there be a reason to disassemble the rear end of the vehicle, or disassemble the engine of the vehicle, or transmission of the vehicle, etc. So the more that the shops can do to remain specific, the stronger their estimate for a specific job is.
But there isn't a requirement for that, right? Are you just giving a recommendation for best practice? Because I don't see that in 3353 about listing the actual components.
Correct, it's best practices.
Okay, because I was scratching my head because I haven't seen that, Rob, before. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions or comments, Jack, or I'll move on to someone else?
Yeah, no, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to Johan Gallo with the California Automotive Business Coalition.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate it. I appreciate this detailed explanation on how the process works. This is somewhat related in the sense that I know that you're aware of it, Pat, as it relates to the issues that some repair shops are having with their software providers on providing estimates, revised estimates, and details like that. And I realize that when we look at a lot of complaints and how they occur, so much of it is born in the process of how the document begins and how it ends. And so I know this is probably going to require legislation to come up with standards for any provider of software for repair order generation within the state, but it's becoming a growing problem for repair shops, especially when these revisions wipe out requirements of the Automotive Repair Act on estimates. And when we look at the Write It Right and all the guidelines that have been published as it relates to that, all of a sudden all the work that a shop does gets wiped out on a revision. And again, I don't know that it's probably something that we should put on the agenda for maybe January's advisory to discuss this in detail. But as I said, it's a growing problem for repair shops where these software providers are making changes that are not compliant with the Automotive Repair Act and the Right at Right. And so maybe it's something we want to put on the January agenda. Again, I appreciate your presentation. It really highlights some of the key issues that shops face.
All right, I made the note. Take a look at doing something for January. Reach out to some of our staff, see what we might be able to come up with. Other questions, comments from the bar advisory group members? See any other? Yeah. Yes, Nikki? Nikki Ayers with the Independent Automotive Professionals Association.
I want to concur with Johan because that is a huge issue. And I'm still in the middle of that exact problem myself. And I really do believe that that needs to be looked at in the bar, especially if there's a complaint and the shop doesn't even know the software doesn't comply with bar requirements, and there's nothing the shop can do. I mean, in some cases, there's nothing the shop can do to comply. I mean, I'm seriously dealing with this problem since August 4th, and it takes so much time to go back and try to cross every T to meet the regulations that you're going to miss them as far as complying with estimates and final repair orders, because there's a software change or something like that, and if you don't catch it, you're screwed actually. So so I just say I think that needs to be looked at, and I think that software providers in the state of California, if they're here, they should have regulations or something, and that's my thought.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Moderator, I think we can now open it up for questions and comments from the public.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the Bureau Chief, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand feature next to your name on the panelist list. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing no raised hands or requests in the Q&A field, would you like me to close that Q&A?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Let me just, before we close this agenda item out, I'll circle back to the bar advisory group. Any final thoughts, comments, questions before we move on? Dave Robinette with ICAR.
Yes, thank you. I just had a quick maybe comment and maybe even a question. In the outline that we were just reading or seeing about the investigation, I noticed that there was a pre-authorization on that early bird form that I think was probably an intent from the shop to at least gain permission to begin some operation on the vehicle. Now, of course, we couldn't see exactly what that wording looked like. It looked like it was a good faith effort of the shop to say, hey, we're going to work on your car. We're going to do some things. But to the point here, it probably wasn't very specific, but they did want to probably get permission to do some basic work to the vehicle. And then I do agree with the findings as it was outlined here that perhaps they didn't follow through on additional information that came about during the course of those repairs and did not communicate that very well to the customer. So I get that, but I'm not quite sure where that leaves a shop in the position of gaining the permission to begin repairs where some of those repairs yet at the moment may be just, to use it, maybe not the best word, but alleged repairs based on what the customer is asking for. And then the pursuant operation discovery by going through and doing the work on the vehicle and some tear down required. That does create kind of an interesting little catch-22, I believe. So I think there should be, or there ought to be, some dialogue or some way to be sure that shops are being in compliance, but also gaining the permission they need to in an early status that they may themselves not know exactly what they're going to find until they get into it. And that's something that protects the shop from an unscrupulous customer, because that does happen, by the way. Once in a while, they'll get a customer that's laying in wait for somebody to not follow a procedure and then not pay a bill based on a technicality. So I think it's good that we're protecting the public. That is our primary directive here, and all of this regulation is aimed at that. I do know that there's just a little bit of a backwash on the shops themselves as well. And I think that if there's any type of a best practices terminology or phraseology that could be applied here, it might be worth sharing with folks that run into that kind of a problem. Just a comment.
That's a great comment, and I think there was a question in there, and maybe we can turn it over back to Derek or Rob. Just maybe I don't think you can blow this up, but maybe read, because I'm having a tough time reading. It's very small print. The notice that's on the early bird notice, the wording that's on that notice, and then maybe explain to everyone again why the particular wording doesn't comply with our estimate and authorization requirements.
Okay, yeah, I can touch on that. So the early bird notice has the top says instructions for our early morning and late evening service customers. It gives instructions to write your order on this envelope, to lock your vehicle, park in assigned area, not in driveway. And then number 3 is place your keys in the envelope. Number 4 is leave a phone number where you can be reached. And number 5 is place the envelope in the early bird night owl mail slot. Well, the requirement of an estimate is that the shop provides a specific job they're going to do. They have to be specific within a specific amount. An early bird notice doesn't give a consumer to have that interaction with the shop. So this is just a form where they can say what their vehicle is, here's my keys, and this is my problem. And they have areas to check that down there. So the shop actually did make an estimate. They went in the system, which is what you do. You go in, they created their estimate. However, what they said is they never contacted the consumer to let them know, hey, we got your car, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by diagnosing the leak by doing a visual inspection, and then we'll give you a call to find out from there. They would document that they called them. That's your unusual circumstance authorization, and proceed with the repair. Then once they decided they needed to go further, they could call them back and say, hey, we found out we need to tear it down. This is a teardown estimate. They would proceed with their teardown, give them an estimate for all the parts and everything needed to do the teardown. And then they have to call them halfway through as well, which in this case would have been an opportunity to say, hey, we were disassembling it, doing the teardown, and this wheel bearing broke, the bolt broke. We're going to need to add that as well, but that's all we need, and we can repair your vehicle. And then the consumer would have been aware. The expectations, as Rog talked about, would have been presented and met. The consumer wouldn't have been surprised. The consumer wasn't upset or anything that he needed the job, needed the work. He was just upset that he wasn't informed ahead of time. And so highlighting that communication and documenting the things that are required is where this kind of fell down. And it's a good example of why it's so important, whether it's your regular consumer that you see every week, or whether it's a new consumer, that you follow those laws and regulations and document all your authorizations as required. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I absolutely agree. I'm not voicing a dissent in any way, shape, or form. I do know that authorization is a thing that is important to do, and it occurs to me in this conversation here that you have your beginning initial steps working towards resolution. There's a midpoint in there somewhere where that conversation is had with the consumer, perhaps with new authorization to move forward. And documenting it that way. I do know that documentation is important. So anyway, it just occurred to me that maybe they just did one documentation right here and then kind of presumed a few things along the way and didn't communicate as they should. So again, I agree with the findings, no question about that. It was just this conversation about the authorization and following through on that. Should they follow through on it? How is best that they should do that? And it sounds to me like that might be a series of follow-throughs depending on how the job progresses. So anyway, just a thought.
Case by case, and as Rob talked about, the communication, building that pyramid. You just need to communicate when there's something, initial authorization, and then the additionals.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Derek and Dave, for asking the question or making the comment that triggered this discussion. Derek, I'm having a tough time reading at the very bottom of the form where the box is kind of pointing our attention to. I don't have a hard copy of it, so I'm just reading from the screen. There's a bolded heading at the very bottom of this form. It says something about there you go. Please, what does this say?
It says give an estimate before any work is performed and return the old parts. So it gives them the option to check those boxes. However, those don't comply with
that doesn't comply.
Bureau regulations.
Okay, that's the point.
And it doesn't appear to be checked either.
No, it doesn't. But yeah, that is that option. It doesn't exist in our law.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to see. Okay. Thank you very much.
If I might add something.
I was just going to say if there's some, yes, Rob, just a quick second. I was just going to say maybe if there's some confusion about this and there's more shops that are confused, that are having trouble with this, maybe if it's not already addressed in our Write It Right publication, we'll look to add a clarification, further educational opportunity for us with the industry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something real quick. Sorry. So I guess to summarize, make it easier for shops. There's never any text that you can put on an early bird notice to have it satisfy estimate requirements. So it really doesn't matter all the stuff that's at the bottom and ready for a signature. The purpose of the early bird notice is simply, here's my car, here's my keys, call me or text me or fax me or email me before you do any work. That's all it does.
Thank you. That's a good point. All right, let's see. Don't see any further hands raised, no additional hands, so we'll close this item out. Rob and Derek, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Hope that was helpful to the members and those in the industry listening in today.
That's just a standard form that's sold by Technical, and it goes all over the country. So maybe what we need to say is we need to have a form for California and a form for the other 49 states. So maybe you could help write the language for California that people can use, or we can help put into the documents. I don't know, but someone like that shop in Fresno got it online. He didn't know that it didn't comply with California. And that's part of the problem. Or maybe a disclaimer or something. I don't know. We have to tell them that it doesn't comply with California. somewhere.
All right. Thank you for the suggestion and comment there. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's move on to our next agenda item. Both of these are handouts. I'll start with the enforcement statistics. This is a handout that we've been providing for the last 2 to 3 years, and used to be a verbal oral presentation that accompanied this, but then it became fairly mundane to the point where we just had it as a handout. But looking at comparing the last quarter with the same quarter from the prior year. I won't go into explaining all of this, as many of you have seen this report, as I said, for the last 2 to 3 years as a standing feature of our advisory group meetings. But I will ask if there's any questions or comments. See any? I'll also now ask the moderator to open it up for public comment, questions.
This is the moderator, and I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand feature next to your name. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, you may, and we'll move to the next agenda item. All right, now for a similar feature that we've added to our meetings. Other boards and bureaus were doing this at their public meetings to include licensing data. So we added that as a feature a couple meetings ago. So it also is a handout. Go into any specifics relating to it. If there's questions, though, from the advisory group, George Ritz, I do see your hand raised, so feel free to ask a question relative to the handout.
So on the second page, it says certified training institutions, and it says you received 46 applications and only 4 were approved. I'm wondering, is that a typo or is that reality?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'll need some help from someone either who's on the panel or one of our staff members who's in the list of attendees. Anybody have a response to that question, or will we have to follow up at the next meeting? I don't see anyone who's jumping forward to answer that question. But I know I will follow up with the manager whose staff puts this together. See him listed here, so he might be out today.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Any other bar advisory group members have questions or comments relative to the handout? We can open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the Bureau Chief, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function next to your name on the panelist checklist. I will go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. All right, we will now move to comments on any items that were not on the agenda. Does anyone from the Bar Advisory Group have a comment to make unrelated to any of the agenda items? Jack Molodonov.
Thanks, Pat. Just recently, I got a question regarding smog and fraud. And one of the questions that come up was the fact that vehicle owners under, as you recall, under 2289, which is in the Health and Safety Code, can, if they try to attempt to try to get a smog certificate illegally, they could be fined up to $5,000. And it's not the BR that enforces it. It's primarily the Attorney General or local city attorneys. And one of the suggestions was, Pat, is maybe that would be something good for outreach. In other words, letting consumers know maybe on the website or something like that, that, hey, requesting or trying to get obtain a smog certificate illegally can also subject the not only the smog station, but also the vehicle owner to a potential fine. So anyway, that came up, and I wanted to at least suggest it and bring it up to the advisory committee.
All right, thank you for the suggestions. I'll pass it on to our outreach team here at the Bureau. That might be a good social media opportunity. Any other comments or questions or statements relating to the any other items that aren't or weren't on the agenda today? Okay, let's see no further comments from the Bar Advisory Group members. Open it up for public comment on that agenda item.
This is the moderator, and once again, we have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function next to your name on the panelist list. I will go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. I see a hand raised from Jean Lopez. Jean, I'll request to unmute your microphone. Please click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you again. Looking at the list of members on the bag, and I could be wrong, but I noticed that the salvage and recycling industry isn't represented in or perhaps they are, but is there any reason that they are not? Chief Duray?
No, other than we hadn't had a request from that industry to have a seat at the table. We certainly can reach out to them. We are pretty, I think we're pretty,
pretty big
industry representatives.
Yeah, there are.
As you can well know, and I'm not sure we need more industry, but I'm never going to say no to anyone that wants a seat at the table. Certainly could handle or stand to have a few more consumer representatives, but that has always been a challenge as well. Get enough public consumer / representatives out there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good question, though.
All right, it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, our last agenda item before we adjourn for today is an announcement that our next Bar Advisory Group meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 27th, 2022. As I said at the outset of today's meeting, most likely that will be still a virtual meeting, and with the hopes that we can go back to in-person, or at least a hybrid approach, combination of in-person and virtual beginning in April. Let me announce the other dates for the advisory group meetings for the rest of next year. In addition to the January 27th date, we mark your calendars, April 21st. These should all be Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken. That seems to be our preferred day of the week. So after January 27, April 21, July 21, and October 20. That's for calendar year 2022. Those will be posted to our public website next few days, next week or so, so stay tuned. I will say that those are currently tentative dates. The date is never fully established and committed to until a public notice is sent out. Sometimes we have to move these dates for one reason or another due to conflicts with other engagements, but those are our tentative meeting dates for calendar year 2022. Any questions or comments or any agenda suggestions for any of these upcoming meetings? We will try to hold regulatory workshops at one or more of these meetings next year, as we always like to do, kind of piggybacking off of the fact that we've already set aside half a day for this meeting to also then come back in the afternoon for a regulatory workshop. Seems at least most efficient from our standpoint. And there will be a lot of work, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, and opportunities for regulatory workshops in response to the AB 471 legislation that was signed into law just last month. Any comments, suggestions regarding the meeting dates, or if there's any conflicts, please let us know, or any possible agenda items. Don't have to think, if you don't think of it today, you can always contact me through email, and we'll look to include it in one of our meetings next year, the topic, whatever it is. All right. I don't see any comments from the Bar Advisory Group meeting members. You can open it up briefly for the public to have any questions or suggestions or comments related to this item before we adjourn. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. And I just got an email response. No, I didn't. We're seeking clarification on the question that Jean Lopez asked, George Ritz asked regarding the the number of renewal applications and approvals for the certified training institutions. Sorry, I thought we had a response on it, but it was someone on our staff monitoring the meeting and already seeking clarification on that. I think we'll try to answer that at the January meeting. All right, I will adjourn the meeting, but first I want to just plug one last time our 2 regulatory workshops scheduled for this afternoon. The first one on storage fees for automotive repair dealers, largely in response to the AB 471 statutory change on this item, is going to be workshopped at 2 p.m. today. That's scheduled from 2 to 3 p.m. or until the close of business. And then we will have a second workshop on auto body and windshield repairs, scheduled at 3:15 to 4:15 p.m. or until the close of business. So I hope many of you can join us or come back for those afternoon workshops. Look forward to getting input on those 2 items. Thank you all. Hope you have a good rest of the day if you're not joining us at the workshops, and a good rest of the week and a good rest of the year. Enjoy the holiday season, and look forward to seeing everyone again in January. Thank you to our moderator, Sarah Rani, our co-moderator, Ann Fisher, and Mike Sanchez, who was operating the webcast, which will be posted to the BAR's public website probably sometime next week. Thank you all again, and good day.
Thank you, Pat.